Welcome to Beck in the Studio. I am Henry James Beck. I'm here with my very good friend Apurv Trivedi. So, Apurv, thanks for coming into, my house, sitting on this
I
purple
was
couch.
forced. I was given no option.
Well, I appreciate you complying with my demands. It shows how good a friend you are. I see that you got, just proving how Indian you are, you're watching the 5-day test cricket there on your phone. Who's winning?
It's just started. India's winning.
Against?
New Zealand, it's the World Test Championship final. But see, I got to stay true to being Indian. I can't miss the final. So.
I never used to watch sports really, but cricket is one of those sports I just can't. It's like golf. Have you tried to watch golf?
You don't want to know the answer to that.
No, I guess I'm not really a fan of watching sports.
See, but for Indians specifically, cricket is not a sport. Cricket is the truest religion you will get.
It's like Veda, man.
Yeah,
it's like it's written in the Vedas. Yeah. Indians must watch cricket.
I think every kid in India wakes up, brings out the newspaper to their parents, steals the last 2 pages, which are generally the sports news, and then picks out who scored the 100, and he knows who to cheer for. So I think that was my life when I was growing up, and I think it's still pretty much the same. It's cricket news that's there in like 3/4 section of the sports page, and then there is other sports that come in, which is good or bad. You can take a call, but man, cricket is cricket.
Yeah. Cricket's also a pretty big thing in South Africa. I want you to give me a bit of your background.
It's strange you asked me to do that because I'm very popular. Half the world knows me. I am an average Joe in India. Born to...
I mean, come on. That's not true. By sheer statistical number, 1.3 billion people. How many of those 1.3 billion people are in Dubai or have traveled around the world like you have? Who's lived in China and been to Canada and taken a drive down the Golden Coast in Australia. That's a gifted life, man.
I was just trying to be modest, but okay. So, yeah, I mean...
Lucknow, right?
Yeah, but, I think there's a lot of people in India who've kind of had the similar life that I had. I was born in a small town to a middle-income household. We had to work our way up, and when you're growing up in a small town in a middle-income household, the pressure is on you to kind of focus on your studies, try and make something of you so that it's better for your future generations. And I think that's the bulk of Indian society. That's the bulk of Indian people, and that's why I say I'm an average Joe. I have been fortunate in the sense that I was able to get education in the best institutes in India. I got a good work profile, got into a good industry, interesting industry that made me travel across the world, meet all kinds of people, and eventually ended up in Dubai, which is...
How you find yourself in this unfortunate situation?
It's still better than what I could have had. So
yeah. I appreciate that, man. I think it's why you and I are such good friends, is your outlook on the world is very duty heavy. It's not a freeloading mindset that you have, and that's something I really respect about you. I guess you're a better judge than I am because I've only been to India once, but I don't know if that's the mindset of the mass in India. Given the situation in India, I think there's if everyone shared your mentality, and this is the case anywhere in the world, not just India, but if everyone shared your mindset, things would be better. So I guess we will hop into the next section. There was a short and sweet introduction that I spoke most of the time for.
See, that's the trick.
So I guess let's just hop straight into India then, since we're already on the topic. What, in your own words, how do you see India? What do you see when you look at your home country?
There's a very straightforward answer to it, and there's a very complicated answer to it. So I'll jump into the straightforward answer, which is, I think it's one of the greatest countries there has been, in the sense that it has had a very rich diversity. It's one of the oldest civilizations. It's very rich in its culture, and it's very secular in its beliefs.
Really?
It is. Then India, for me, as when we were growing up, and the kind of things we used to hear, I think India is still one of the countries, and I've traveled across the globe, and this is something that stands out about India, which is the impact of community is much more in India. Now, don't get me wrong, this could be taken in a positive connotation, this could be very easily taken in a negative connotation also. But I still tend to believe that the impact that community has in India, in an overall perspective, is still very positive, and that is what stands out for me in India. You will have families sticking together, you will have friends sticking together. It's much more easier to develop a community in India than it is in Australia, it is in Dubai. So that's the thing that stands out for me in India, and that's why I think it's one of the greatest countries.
So that's in South Africa, we have an Indian population there, and they're detached from India to, okay, I'm terrible with history, like 200-300 years now, and they also have that very community strong mentality. And I think it is, there are many weaknesses I think come from that, but overall I think that the strength of having the traditional family unit and community structure in place is a strength that is just like none other. I mean, if you compare it to other cultures, the West is, with regards to the West, the traditional family structures is just wrecking ball is coming through it, and the community structure is just splintered, and I think it's causing a lot of problems that we don't even talk about. What do you think is the bad side of this community structure though?
It's like any coin, this has got massive impacts also. There is a lot of coercion that happens when it's community.
Coercion as
in the sense of beliefs, in the sense of standing out. You have to go through a lot of pressure when you're of a viewpoint which your community does not agree to or is not awoke to. What happens in that case, there's a lot of suppression, there's a lot of coercion that happens also. So it's like a
hive mind type of thing, right? It's like you can't go against the traditions or the norms. I mean, I think from what I've seen being here in Dubai, I think your generation is probably going to be the one to change that.
I mean, I wish I could agree with you on this one, but the fact of the matter is, we're still 1.3 billion people. And it's sad, but the people who think like me, or the people who are more seeking towards what's an optimal solution for the society are still fairly less. And there's a lot of uneducated youth which is just running directionless. And when I say uneducated, I don't really mean having the primary education. What I think India has been missing out ever since it's been an independent nation is the focus on the morality and the culture that was there before. And that's the thing that's been missing. And what happens is when these uncultured or uneducated people become a majority in the system is just put in an auto mode to collapse. And unfortunately, that's something which is becoming more and more consistent with the Indian system. And we'll definitely deep dive into that, but I think that's one of the major issues. And like I was telling you, one of the biggest examples I can give you of this community pressure is with rapes. There is so much taboo around with any kind of physical intimation or physical intimacy or any kind of sex related discussion, that eventually the societal pressures become much more on the victim than the oppressor. And I think that's something which is there everywhere in the world. I'm not saying it's just there in India, but
yeah, I hear what you're saying. I think you're right. I think it's worse in India. It's like, what did she do? Where did she put herself? What was she wearing? That kind of thing, right?
And it just becomes, it's the thought or the understanding. It's so ingrained, this patriarchy thinking, and it's so ingrained in the mindsets of people that it's going to take generations to gradually wash that out.
Yeah. So an opinion I have formed on this situation in India, and correct me if you believe I'm wrong, or help direct my thinking to be more towards the truth. But exactly with what you're saying with regards to the patriarchy, I think a lot of the world has the Western world has gotten to a place where this equality is basically across the board now. But in India, you have a situation where men still believe that they're the king, and if they make an advance on a woman and a woman rejects them, there's so much almost animosity, like, how dare you reject me? And I mean, I can't speak specifically for rape situations, but I can imagine that a man's ego who's been hurt, who believes he's on the top of the food chain, and having this little woman nothing tell him no, puts him into a rage, and it creates this anger towards free-thinking women.
And again, here community plays a big part, because typically when, let's say, a man and a woman discuss something and the woman says no, if the societal pressures do not compound on the man, that how can you woman say no to you, that does a lot of impact on the psyche of a person. And that's why I said, it's ingrained in multiple generations that patriarchy, or man's going to make all the decision. And it's changing. I'm not saying it's not going away. There's
but 1.3 billion worth of change is a long time.
It's a long time. And it's unfortunate because from an aspect of a historical viewpoint, I understand where this is coming from, but we need to evolve as our society has evolved.
I agree. I mean, would you mind elaborating on that, just so I understand what you mean exactly when you say from a historical point? Because I think I know what you mean, and I think I agree. But just
the deep root cause, or where patriarchy came into existence, was India was primarily an agrarian economy.
Oh yeah.
So it's always been an agrarian economy, and the roles that were divided amongst the men and women was the women were going to take care of the house, the men would go do farming, do hunting, or what have you. And predominantly the belief was that since men were doing the more riskier, the more
putting themselves on the line,
so the women were meant to take care of the men in case there is something that goes wrong. A man can get hurt. Because the man was doing a lot of physical work, the woman would come and help the guy out. They'd basically take care
pampering,
of the person.
Like, I don't know what the right word is, but if you've been toiling all day on the farm, you got blisters in your hand, and you baked from the sun so that you could feed your family, and the woman has been again, not a history buff on these things, but I imagine that women had a far more physically easier position than the men, and therefore the woman was still of high energy when the men got home and he was sapped.
Absolutely. And that's taking no credit away from the women in the sense
not
that
at all.
It's not easy to run a house, man. I've been living here alone for 6 months. I know it's not easy, man. Washing those clothes, making the food, and then trying
that's
to
just
have
and
peace.
that's just the things that we can think of today. I mean, back in the day, we don't even know what kind of. But again, I mean, not to go off too far off course here, but you know, I'm woman. I have more respect for women than anything in the world, because I mean, I essentially was, for half of my life, I was raised in a household where it was just my mother looking after me and two sisters. And, you know, women feel a lot more than men do. That's why men are able to detach from their kids, and they can go out and work all day, and they can do their mission. And women feel hurt when they miss key parts of their kids' lives. Women feel a lot more than men do. On a general basis, and this is just biological differences between us. So when something goes, when you have a woman, like again my mother is an example, who had to put so much of herself into raising us kids, working a full-time job, coming home, cooking and cleaning and washing, and I mean it takes a lot, but the amount of emotional stress on a woman, I think, is more than men feel pretty much ever.
Absolutely. And you know, that's what happened, because historically the men were doing the more physical things, and the women were handling more of the emotional aspects as well as the well-being of the man, because you know, he was supporting the hunting and the farming or what have you. It's ingrained in the, you know, mindset of people that is the role of a woman. And you know, unfortunately, and you know, it's a scientific fact that women evolve faster than men.
Oh, I didn't know that, really.
Yeah.
Okay, they mature faster too, so
Yeah.
I guess it makes sense. You know?
So what's happened is the women today have evolved to the stage where they can support the family. The men, unfortunately, now it's a sad situation for men, because they still got to support the family, and at the same time they need to evolve so that they can accommodate the women, you know, basically transforming her role. Instead of him taking the proper load of the family, the women today are capable of helping you out with that.
Yeah.
But that transformation in terms of your emotional being, the men have been slow.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the issues come up. You know, it's just you know, the mental aspect of men being challenged on women actually encroaching to the role that they've been doing it.
Yeah, you know,
historically.
This is a huge issue that we face in the world. I don't know where I stand on the whole situation. I am of the opinion that a parent should be at home raising children. And I think we're in the world today where a woman can do just as well in the workplace as a man can, because it's not physical anymore, it's up here. Yeah. So a woman can do a job as well as any man, and vice versa. So I'm still of the opinion that you need to have one parent at home. I think that we've gotten to the point as a society where it's malleable. You can have a woman or a man be at home raising the kid, but you got to keep them off of TV, which can just brainwash your kid and teach them morals that you don't want them to have or anything. But I hear what you're saying, and I think it's an incredibly difficult problem. That's a problem that I think is faced in most of the world, although I do think that in terms of the Western world, they've gotten to a point now where this is still kind of an issue, but there's a lot more quality. But in India in particular, I mean, it's still really...
In India, it's a major concern now, because we're just moving into that transformation. There's increasing women participation in the workforce. And though on one hand it's a good side, what's happening is the children that were being groomed, nurtured, given the right morals by the mother that was actually taking care of them, right now have nobody.
Yeah.
And the main points or the main sources of them developing morality and them developing standards is
replaced by like TV,
from the media content they consume, and it's a very risky place to be in.
Yeah, 100% agree.
Yeah, and you know, I am not saying
So sorry, just to interrupt you there. So, do you believe that these, just to get back onto the original question, you know, you're talking about these men who this rape epidemic in India, are these men the ones who had a lack of moral formation when they were growing up? because their mothers were working, or do you think that this is do you think that this is still just the patriarchy? Like, he probably saw his mother being treated like a second grade citizen, and therefore believes a woman. And because I think that the major issues where this is happening, I can imagine where the major issues where these things are happening in India is you have the cultural hubs, which will be Mumbai and Delhi and Chennai, maybe. I don't know.
Maybe Bangalore.
Bangalore. So you have these cultural hubs where you've got a lot of the smartest people, and they're thinking next generation. Like, they're thinking, we got to build a business, we got to build a this, we got to build a that. And then you've got all these outlying small towns and things where the mentality is like 2 generations old. And then these guys think, I'm going to move to Delhi and I'm going to make money. Now they're taking their mindset that hasn't evolved with the cultural hubs and the cities that are next generation, and they're coming to these cities and they're encountering these women who think on the next level.
Absolutely. And that is what happens, because you have a female diaspora that is evolved, that does not, for them going to a party, coming back at midnight is not that problem, because they're free to do that. But there is a part of the crowd that is not evolved to that extent to understand the lifestyle. And when they're put together, it becomes toxic.
So do you think that men born and bred in Delhi, for example, have the same mindset as the modern woman?
Not necessarily, but it does bring out a lot of difference, because a person who's brought up in a top city has received more evolved education, understands these items more. See, it's like you said, it's a combined effect of the morality that these guys are raised with, experience of how their families treated the females, how strong the female has been while them growing up, because that plays a big important role. How your mother or how your sisters have been positioned in the family, and can they take a stance? Because when you see a female taking stance, you try and understand their individuality also as you're growing up. If you just see them, being run over or being, just treated as second-rate citizens, you don't tend to respect that more. So it's a combined effect of these factors, and that's why I say, it's sad to see that the morality of such a rich culture is degrading day by day. Because if you look at it, it's a simple concept. Let's say a new guy has come to from somebody from my town, somebody from Lucknow, small town, or maybe an even smaller village, comes to Delhi. He sees on an isolated road, maybe 2 a.m. in the night, a drunk girl walking. There are only two broad thought processes that he can have. One is, okay, I need to help this lady. She's at night walking alone. It could be dangerous. We should probably help her get home. The second thought process is, isolated road, drunk lady, easy for me to take advantage. Now, the decision making on these 2 major thoughts is basically your moral conscious and your moral compass that you've developed over the year.
That's a good point, man.
And
so traditionally, where has India's moral compass typically come from? Is it Hinduism?
Okay, I have a very different thought process on Hinduism, but the moral compass for India, and I don't want to limit it to an ideology, but I sense that the moral compass comes from your family values. So for me, irrespective if you're following Islam, irrespective if you're a Christian, how your family values are ingrained in you, that become the major driver of your moral compass. And it could be worshipping female goddesses. It could be understanding the role your mother, your sister play in the society. It could be seeing how women have been fighting for equality for the past 100 years, and how they've progressed, respecting their sacrifices. It could be anything, but I don't see religion in India. I don't see it as a driver with respect to the gender bias that's there. I don't see religion plays a major role. I mean, to my experience, I think it's very limited. So the morality comes in from the education,
it's
from the family.
learned experiences over the generations.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think that is difficult to pass on generation to generation. You know, because for example, in Africa, there were never really any books written. So you'd have maybe a father and a son would go out hunting. And then the father would get bitten by a red snake, and the son would see this, and then the father dies. And then the son's like, whoa, this is dangerous. And then he teaches his son, never, ever, ever go close to that red snake, ever, ever. Because obviously it's a first generation experience. He's seen it firsthand. And then that son never, ever sees a red snake again. And then he has a son, and he never teaches his son this. Yeah. And then he gets bitten by the red snake and dies. So if you're passing on knowledge one generation without it being written,
with regards to written material that's there's a lot of written content that's available. But the thing is, it's not highlighted. It's not emphasized enough in India, and that's why this generation Passover or this mentality Passover is primarily focused on the family values, because and you know, this is again a problem with India. We're teaching our students IT, we're teaching our students computers, we're teaching our students English, but the focus on the moral values has been low. And
it's a tough one though, you know, because take, for example, me being a Christian. I wouldn't want a school to teach my kids morality because it might not align with my personal morality. And that's why traditionally I think religions have been such an incredible, you know, where you can debate whether religions are true or not, but you cannot debate the true value that they've generally had. You know, obviously there's been people who've abused this, there have been instances where it's been used for evil, but in general, if you take the average household, let me give you an example for me. I had school, which was teaching me knowledge and everything. Then I had my house unit, and then above that I had what I believe to be my understanding of the world and the universe, which was, you know, you had God who created us, and he had a specific way that he wanted us to behave in order to enter to the kingdom of heaven. And if you look at the way that the religion outlined what was right living, it was in true accordance with civilization building mentality. So for example, don't sleep with your neighbor's wife, don't steal, don't murder anybody. These are morals that they were even higher than my own parents in my eyes. You know, this was God's will. This isn't mom or dad's will. This isn't my school's will. This is another order above all else, and I have to confer to this. And I think that broad understanding and that broad belief system had real value in terms of people mingling together in functional societies. And just to ask you, sorry to keep cutting you off, there must be something similar to that in Indian culture, because Indians share a lot of similarities regardless of where in India they come from.
And you know, that's absolutely pointing to the problem, because this used to happen where we didn't really need the schools to teach morality, because the parents had enough time to teach their children morality. And you know, there was these family gatherings where they teach you what are the right things to do, what are not right things to do. But now with the services sector booming in India, the parents are busy, the kids are getting their morality from TV.
You know,
it's that is one of the root cause of problems with morality. And you know, it's a vicious cycle, because it keeps on repeating, because if the kids are not mentored or tutored properly today, it's going to come back again. It's not like it'll just stick to that generation, because half the generation would then not teach their kid what is right, what is wrong, what is misbehavior, which is what is accepted behavior, and it's becoming into a compounding problem.
Yeah, it's a complicated problem. I think that I think India still has a way to go before it gets to because in my belief, the West has gotten to a point where it reached equality.
Yeah.
Everyone was on the same footing regardless of race or gender or anything. And that's great because you want the best person available to do the job.
Too much independence is also not good.
In what sense?
In what sense? In the sense that, if you look at US for an example, they, for me, I see US reaching the pinnacle of, setting a benchmark for societies to be.
Maybe 20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yeah.
Now what's happened is they had so much free time that they're just creating issues which are completely non-issues.
I don't want to get too far off of India, but just on this point, I don't think that it's that they're necessarily creating non-issues. I think that the issues from 20 years ago are starting to come to the forefront because of negligence on parents teaching their kids morals and things, because now the kids from our generation in the US are now getting jobs and they're now in the institutions and they're now starting to push what they believe to be right and correct. And I think what they believe to be right and correct in the most of the time is not actually right and correct. There was a thought that I had, but it's slipped.
There's something which I remember, and I don't know if it's very relevant here or not, but one of the things that my parents told me was it's very important to remember your history. You don't erase the bad incidents or the bad situations you were in. You don't erase them off your memory.
Those are the ones you remember the most. Though.
Those are the ones you need to remember so that you do not repeat those mistakes again. What's happened with the world is they're trying to forget whatever bad has happened and they're trying to move on. But the issue is that if you don't take your learnings from that, you're going to fall back in that trap, and that's what's happening.
Yeah, I think that there's been a particular focus on trying to correct the wrongs of the past, which is admirable to an extent. But when you're talking about severely impacting the present, for trying to repair something that it's like if you had to go to British guys and expect them to repair the sins of their forefathers today in India. How are they going to do that? It's best to say that happened, it wasn't great, but we're here today and we need to move forward.
Absolutely. It's unfortunate, but most of the people, the mindset is to focus and fixate on problems rather than try and look for solutions. I think it's a very limited portion of population across the world, not just to India, not just to US, everywhere, where the solutions oriented people are in minority today. And if you look 3 generations back, the kind of problems these guys faced, we don't even think of that.
Yeah.
And we have a nice and easy life, and these petty little problems. You look at this, when was stress a problem?
What? No, I mean, you're talking about stress today. You're talking about what is your stress? Like if you, and I did a video on this channel about that. I don't know if you watched it. It's called the Gift of Society. It's where I basically tried to make the point that, look, we are the most privileged generation that has ever walked the face of the planet, man. Our stress is, I got the 65-inch instead of the 75-inch TV. Obviously I'm not talking about like people who are really still struggling. I mean, if you take the general person alive today, they're living better than kings lived freaking 500 years ago, man. No question. and the issues that are such magnificent issues to the general person today is in complete ignorance of history. That's why I agree with you, man. We have to know history. We have to.
Yeah. And
if nothing else but to gain appreciation for how things are actually pretty damn good right now.
Absolutely.
And trying to get us back onto India, because I don't want to stray too much, but in particular, what I see in the US, and you can tell me if there's anything you see like this in India, because I know you said before, after you became an independent state again, I'd like to get your opinion on how you feel that all impacted India. But what I see in most Western countries now is people are essentially just attacking things that they believe to be evil, like institutionalized racism as an example. They're attacking institutions, and they don't understand how or why the institutions they're attacking have come to be. It's almost as if you're attacking what your ancestors have built over centuries of hard-learned lessons, and you don't know why. You don't agree with something happening, and therefore you tear the institution apart, and you are attacking. It's like pulling on threads that you don't know what they unravel, and it could be the fabric of your society. I know that could be seen as like an extreme statement, but I believe it to be true. I believe that you're pulling on threads that you don't know what they unravel because of one surface level issue, and you don't understand how deep that goes. With regards to India, you mentioned specifically that while we were talking now, after you became independent, there hasn't been much morality. Do you think that prior to occupation there was?
The thing that, the worst thing that British could have given us is the education system.
Yeah?
The education.
You mean their education system?
Their education system, which is now, present in India, and it's the way modern education is defined. Prior to that, the education system in India was very different. There were concepts. I don't know if you know this, but in terms of evolution, India, the not just India, but the civilization in the Indian subcontinent was way ahead compared to the West. I'm talking about maybe 1500 to 2000 years back.
Yeah.
We had astronomy, we had mathematics, we had philosophy, way ahead of the Western society at that point of time. And it's a very complicated issue, but I will come to it. I will try and get you more content on this. India had a caste system.
Yeah.
Today it's blown out of proportion. No questions about that. But India had a caste system which particularly was people identified by profession, which is the Brahmins were the people who were doing all the studying, studies, religion, what have you.
Science and that kind of thing.
All the knowledge
Yeah.
content was done by the Brahmins. There was Kshatriyas, who were all the warriors or all the soldiers. There's Vaishyas who were doing the business. There's Shudras who were doing the menial jobs. Now, today it's an evolution of 3,000 years. It was a very different society then. But that system worked because everybody had a purpose to what they were waking up in the morning. They knew what has to be done. They knew what their role was. And because it was a smaller circle, it was a smaller society, it worked efficiently. Now the society enlarged, but when the British came in, and then when somebody is good at something and you try and force them to do 50 other things which they're not good at, they just lose their purpose in life.
And I mean what else happens then is if you're competing with someone who has a natural innate ability with something, and you're coming fourth or fifth every time, I mean, that does psyche damage, you know. It's like, you're not good enough, you're not this, you're not that, rather than if you were in a specific trade, doing your best.
And you know, I completely agree to the thought that everybody should get an equal opportunity. Agreed.
100%.
Give everybody an equal opportunity. Maybe a Shudra or a Vaishya or a Kshatriya has more propensity to educate themselves than a Brahmin kid. I don't really care.
Yeah.
If that's the case, then make him, you know, don't tie him down to that community or that sect. You know, let him be what he wants to, but don't try and force something on him either, that you have to do it because everybody else is doing it. And that's what's happening in India today. You know, unfortunately, everybody has to go through that same education, which is redundant after a period of time. And you know, it might have evolved, it might have modernized in India, but it's still what's happening. You know, if you look at so this mentality is so ingrained in Indians. You look at it, you know, there was a phase in the past 10 years where every kid that was being born, every boy child has to be an engineer, every girl child has to be a doctor. It may not be necessary that they're good at those skills, but because this mindset has been there in the society that everybody should do XYZ, that's the historical mindset that India has had. And that's why they keep coming back to it. And what the British system did was just gave them too many choices to get into everything. Everybody wants to be everyone, and they end up being no one.
Yeah, that's a really good statement for the state of the world today in general. Actually, I think. So.
And I say that because, you know, there's a rationale behind what I'm saying. You know, life evolves, societies evolve, but the fundamentals of existence remain the same. I was thinking about it, and I think I read it somewhere also very recently. So if you look at the core basics of the Indian subcontinent or the Hindu culture, in Hindu culture we don't shake hands. We say namaste.
Yeah.
In Hindu culture, we used to burn the dead. In Hindu culture, when we come back from somebody's death, we used to wash ourselves, clean ourselves. In Hindu culture, we wouldn't used to kill animals. We used to stick to the plants, vegetarian diet. Look at how relevant it's become today. In the times of COVID, you're not allowed to shake hands. You're told to, you know, you're burning the dead so that the virus doesn't spread. You are not eating meat because animals could be very easy carriers. You're washing yourselves after coming back from any place. These fundamentals don't change. These fundamentals stay. And you know, the culture was based on a lot of knowledge that these guys had for past generations. These fundamentals won't change. You can evolve as much as you can, but these fundamentals won't change. And you know, people laugh at that, but now they're realizing that if there is a culture, there was a rationale behind a culture. It wasn't just because I want to do this, I'm going to make everyone do this. There was a science behind what these guys were trying to propagate.
Yeah. So what you're basically saying is, like, the fact of not shaking hands was maybe 2,000 years ago there was some serious disease that guys were fighting, and they realized not to do it. I mean, it's like you know, when you sneeze, someone says bless you. That comes from England, obviously, during plague times, and that's like, don't die. So yeah, I mean, all these traditions that have come out, I hear what you're saying. This type of stuff, was this written in Vedas or?
Yeah. It's you know, okay, we're stepping into this territory where I have a very different thought. So I'll give you a brief.
I love different thoughts.
I'll give you a brief on Hinduism. So I know it's been associated as a religion. To be honest, my family is very religious, but my family being religious, I've been exposed to scriptures which I've read, not a lot, but a little, and my family was gracious enough to let me develop my own independent thought process on Hinduism, and I was a curious child, so I used to read about it. And if you look research about Hinduism, where does the word Hinduism come from? So Hinduism is primarily the region between Himalayas and the Ind Mahasagar or the Indian Ocean. So it's not a religious entity to begin with. It's a geographic entity identification to begin with.
Okay, that's interesting.
So it was never a religion. It was
just the way of life of the people who lived in that region.
If you look at it, it makes sense. For the people who resided in that area, what were the two major factors that were, important for their survival? One was the Himalayas that gave them a natural boundary with regards to the rest of the world, and the second was the Indian Ocean, which again gave them a natural boundary or a natural defense mechanism. So the convention of Hindu is basically somebody who's born in that area.
That's really interesting.
So irrespective of what religion he's practicing, like a elephant born in Africa is an African elephant. Somebody who's born, irrespective of what faith, is he a Christian, is he a Jew, is he a Muslim, is he following a Hindu faith or a particular Hindu god?
So that that's really interesting, and it makes a lot of sense. Like for example, you wouldn't want to hunt an animal because an animal can hunt you back, especially in India, man. You got lots of dangerous animals. You don't want to hunt an animal because an animal can hunt you back. You don't want to shake hands because you can share disease. All of these things which might have naturally occurred and became a staple of Hinduism. And when I refer to Hinduism now, I don't mean the religion, I mean the general geographical people, the way that they lived there. And Dr. Jordan Peterson actually, because he speaks a lot about Christianity, and the fundamental point he makes about Christianity is that human beings are a lot more receptive to life lessons and to ways of existing if it's coded in a story. So you listen to, so for example, as a Christian, I listen to a story of Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ in my religion he's the kind of person you model yourself after, because he is the image of everything good in the universe. And then you come to Hinduism and you're talking about it. I can see the same thing, the logic of why you guys are doing the things that you've been doing for hundreds of years, and then coded into a series of Vedas in a story mechanism so that people can assimilate it in their brain and it makes sense and the information sticks. I mean, that's incredible. And just kind of makes me wonder how smart people used to be that they came up with this kind of story,
And that is vision, vision which we don't have.
Yeah, we really don't have. I mean, that's like alien type of foresight right there. That's incredible.
And it's things like this. So coming back to Hinduism, and this is, I am not trying to make this a fact. This is what I believe. So it's again an independent opinion. Hinduism has never been a single god worship, or I think the term is
monotheism.
Monotheism, yeah. It's always been a lot of gods. So, and this is based on what I feel, and I follow a lot of people when it comes to Hinduism as a religion or a way of life, and they seem to believe from the history that has been there, and by the sheer number of gods we used to worship, 35 million gods. It's not easy, worshiping those many gods. So it's the core fundamentals of the people that lived in the area is in and around, and you'll see most of the religions that were innate or inhabitant or born out of that region. I'm not talking about Christianity, I'm not talking about Islam. I'm talking about the religions that were developed in the area of Indian subcontinent.
Yeah.
Most of these religions seem to focus on one aspect, which is karma, or how you lead your life. And the goal of your life or your living being is to get out of the cycle of birth, death, rebirth, and that whole cycle. So the idea of all the religions developed in this particular geographical piece of land was to attain salvation from the cycle of life and rebirth. And that's what most of the religions preach, irrespective you're Brahmin, irrespective you're a Shudra, irrespective whatever caste you are. Caste is a very different. In fact, Sadhguru is one person I follow a lot, and I remember him saying these caste systems were actually particular religions that they used to worship.
The caste system specific.
Yeah,
okay, so if you were like Brahmin, you would fall into this religious subgroup.
Yeah. So he says that was the basis of origination for the caste system, along with the profile and the profession you were practicing. So people tend to forget it. People tend to link Hinduism with a particular god or a particular set of practices. But to be honest, there is no papacy in Hinduism. There is no religious book. There are the Vedas that teach you how to live, but there is no set of guidelines that.
It's not like the Bible or the Quran or something like that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So where is the book? Where is the papacy? How is it a religion? Who stakes claim to this religion? There is nobody, because it is not a religion. It is just the way to live your life, and something which is very innate to this region is it's never been a land of believers. Never. If you look at the past history of this subcontinent, you will never find people who were blindly following a faith. It's always been a land of seekers, where people have been going out, studying, researching, meditating to find out the purpose of life. Jainism, Buddhism, these are all subsects of you can call it Sikhism, being a Sikh. These are all subsets of lifestyle or the Hindu culture. And again, Hindu culture is not religious. It's just a geographic identity. So this region has been about seeking the truth of your purpose of life, or karma, or dharma, or moksha, which is basically salvation from that cycle. So that's what the concept has always been. Now what has happened is, fortunately, unfortunately, religion has been used as a mode of conquest as we've progressed further in the human
and that's a truism across every single probably country that we know today. And
when it was being used as a method of conquest, and there were people who benefited out of calling Hinduism a religion, calling Islam followers non-Hindu, or what have you. The differentiation started from there. There was no differentiation before that. Hinduism, you're free to believe, in Hinduism itself, and I'm talking about Hinduism.
You can be a Hindu and also a Christian, for example. Like in terms of you're following
in popular culture today, you would be wrong, because Hinduism is a religion in popular culture today. If you're a Hindu, you pray to Hindu gods. But there is freedom of thought in Hinduism. You can follow any of the 35 million gods.
So what I mean by that is, like, when I'm referring to Hinduism, I guess I mean the way of living that was, for example, you're vegetarian, you don't shake hands, you burn the dead, like core principles of Hinduism, as in terms of what it means to live life, right living, while also following a religion, right? I mean, that's the idea.
That was the original founding idea. And like I said, these different gods that were there in Hinduism, that is something that Hinduism was willing to accommodate. So because it was a culture, it was willing to accommodate independent belief systems of a small community or a large community or whatever.
Is that why you think there's 35 million gods now?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Otherwise, there is no rationale of such a history.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting. We're kind of out of time. I think you definitely got to come back for a second one.
That's all right.
But
I feel much better than when we started.
I think just a finishing. Actually, one question I want to ask you, and this will be the basis for where we start next time, is: do you believe in a God? Do you think that there is a creator?
Again, this is typically my belief. My creator, to me, is my parents. So for me, if I don't really believe that there is a high power that's guiding everybody. For me, that high power is my parents. But my parents believe that there is a high power that's guiding everyone. So in that context, I do believe there is God, there is faith, and for me it's always worked out because I've not really been a very religious person, but I do believe that it gives me the power, gives me the strength to actually, when I'm suffering, when I'm struggling, it gives me the power to kind of hold on to hope. And generally, if I'm struggling or if I'm not doing well, people go to temples, I go to my mother.
Right.
So I do think there is a high power that guides everything. The question is who you believe to be that high power. You can believe it's a God, you can believe it's Jesus, you can believe it's Ram, you can believe it's Vishnu, Shiva, doesn't really matter. But I do think there is something that basically makes us react to particular items when we're exposed to.
This is okay. We'll definitely have to come over again because this is a core question, and I want you to sit on this one for our next conversation. And that's where do human beings' thoughts emerge from? When something comes into your mind, where does that come from? And I think we're gonna have to. We have 3 more minutes, so why don't you pull a random topic for us from the bowl of random topics?
I am gonna dread this. It says city or nature. What does that mean?
City or nature. If you had to pick your dream vacation or where you would love to live or anything, like what comes to mind when you think city or nature? Which, if you had to choose between the two?
Oh, nature, definitely.
Why is that?
Were it to me, I would just, maybe live in the countryside, have a big farm where I grow my own vegetables without those toxic pesticides.
But what happens when the pests start eating your vegetables, dude? What do you do then? Are you just gonna let them eat them?
I'll culture them. I'll culture the pest.
You'll teach them in the ways of Hinduism, Eat meat, not vegetables.
Stop eating my vegetables.
There's this being, because I do believe in a creator. I believe that there was a superpower that created the known universe, and they say that. Just reading this book, and it mentions how God essentially presents. Because God is the superpower of the universe and our brains are so limited, God essentially, he presents himself to us in a way that we can comprehend. And whenever I've been standing on top of a mountain or standing in something that was just truly naturally beautiful, I was just at awe. And I believe it's because I was witnessing God. Like my conception of God is that God is everything. God is the air that we breathe. He's the land that we walk on. He is creation itself, while also being the thing that created creation, you know. And I think that most people that I know, when, like, if you're standing in a city, you'll be like, man, that's an impressive city. Looks pretty. But you won't be like, whoa, like your breath is taken away. You know, I have never met anybody who's had their breath taken away truly by a city, you know, like, this is just, it's just so much beauty that I'm looking at.
I think it's also to do with the fact that it's easier for us to comprehend where a city comes from. But the natural beauty, it's difficult for us to comprehend because there is no architectural plan for doing a gorge or a lake or a valley.
Or the cycle of water, you know, taking a piss in the grass to drinking it out the mountain streams 2 weeks later,
And that's why you know, it's one of the reasons I too feel there is a higher power, because somebody's got to do the math.
Yeah.
You know,
it's just like, it's too much logic and reason for it to be dumb luck, you know, Okay, well, I mean, I'm glad to know that you're a nature person. Hopefully we can go take awe at some of that nature whenever we go somewhere.
Absolutely. Bring out, back in the studios.
Well, I think that that's pretty much it. Guys, thanks for tuning in. If you made it to the end, appreciate it. Hope you learned something new and interesting from Apurv here. I did. I think that Hinduism, what you explained to me about Hinduism has completely changed my conception of the entire continent, man. It's like, thank you for coming out, sitting here, educating me. And you'll definitely see Apurv on this couch again. Thanks for tuning in, guys.
See you.